Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're getting into a YouTube news commentary from I've Had It. It stirred up some conversation.
Yeah, it definitely has.
And our focus is going to be on, well, the financial side of things. Elon Musk's Tesla and also Donald Trump's economic policies, all seen through the lens of this commentary.
Right. And it's really important for you listening to know this source has a definite point of view. It's quite opinionated.
Absolutely.
So our job here isn't really to echo those opinions. It's more about digging into the actual claims they make, the facts they present about Tesla's numbers, Trump's policies, that kind of thing.
Trying to pull out the core information for you, basically. Sift through some of the stronger language, maybe.
Exactly. Get the signal from the noise.
Okay, let's start with Tesla then. The commentary makes a big deal about a downturn. They mention a huge drop in net income, 71% year over year.
Yeah, that's a massive number.
For someone maybe not deep in finance, what does a 71% drop in net income really tell you?
Well, net income is essentially your profit, right? After
Right.
everything's paid, costs, expenses, all of it.
The bottom line.
The bottom line. So a drop like 71%,
Okay.
it means Tesla's making considerably less profit than the same time last year. It usually points to some pretty big challenges.
Like what sort of challenge?
It's going to be a few things.
Oh.
Maybe demand for their cars is down, maybe production costs went up, or maybe just more competition. The EV market is getting crowded.
That makes sense. The commentary obviously has its own theory we'll get to, but yeah, the whole industry is changing.
For sure. And that wider context is important too.
They also mentioned total revenue sliding 9%. How does that fit in?
So total revenue, that's just the total money coming in from sales before costs.
Okay.
A 9% drop there means, well, they're selling less stuff overall, so less money coming in and then much less profit kept after costs. It paints a picture of real financial pressure.
And investors are noticing, it sounds like. The commentary pointed out the worst quarterly stock drop since 2022 and down 41% in 2025 so far.
Yeah, those are big hits. A stock drop like that, it reduces the company's overall market value, makes it harder to raise money, shakes investor confidence, it ripples.
Right. Now, the commentary connects these struggles directly to Elon Musk. His behavior, his alignment with Trump, mentioning that go woke, go broke idea. Can you unpack what the commentary is arguing there? How do they think his actions are hitting Tesla's sales?
So the argument presented in the commentary is basically that Musk's public statements, his political leanings, maybe his social media presence,
All of that.
yeah, all that stuff is turning off a big chunk of potential buyers. Specifically, they mention people in major urban areas, which tend to be more politically liberal.
And those are big markets.
Huge markets. So the commentary suggests this go woke, go broke idea, often aimed at companies perceived as too liberal, might actually be working in reverse here against Tesla because of Musk's perceived alignment with more conservative figures or viewpoints, leading to boycotts or just people choosing other brands.
Interesting. So they're saying consumer choices are getting tangled up with the CEO's politics.
That's the core of their argument, yes.
Yeah.
That for a global brand like Tesla, the leader's public image can potentially really move the needle on sales.
Yeah.
Especially when it intersects with strong political feelings. It's one interpretation of the data they presented.
Okay, so that's the picture the commentary paints for Tesla. Facing headwinds, partly linked, in their view, to the political climate and Musk's role in it.
Right.
Let's shift then to Donald Trump's economic policies, particularly China. The commentary didn't mince words, called him the weakest American president ever on China.
That's definitely a strong claim.
What's their reasoning behind that?
Well, the commentary suggests that despite a lot of, tough talk and rhetoric early on about trade.
The tariffs, the trade war talk.
Exactly. They argue the actual results didn't show much leverage. Their perspective is that China, with its massive economy and long history, essentially called the bluff, didn't take the threats as seriously as maybe they were intended.
And the commentary seemed to suggest Trump's own stance shifted over time, from tough to maybe more conciliatory later.
Yeah, they highlighted that perceived inconsistency. Played some audio, I think.
Right.
And for them, that points to a lack of a clear, steady strategy. In international trade, that kind of unpredictability, it can make businesses nervous, both here and overseas. It affects investment, supply chains.
Okay. And tariffs specifically. The commentary brought up an IMF prediction.
Ah, yes. That the U.S. might be among the hardest hit by his own tariffs.
How would that work? Seems counterintuitive.
Well, generally speaking, tariffs are taxes on imports. So American companies using imported parts pay more. Those costs often get passed to consumers. higher prices.
Okay.
Plus, other countries usually retaliate with their own tariffs on U.S. goods. So American exporters get hurt too. It can become a cycle that slows things down. The IMF likely saw those potential ripple effects.
And the commentary tied this into other countries maybe looking elsewhere, away from U.S. products.
Yeah, they suggested that this perceived instability or unreliability might push other nations to seek alternatives, look for more stable trading partners or technology sources.
Okay. What about Jerome Powell, the Fed chair? The commentary brought up Trump's past criticisms, wanting to fire him.
Right. That's significant because the Federal Reserve's independence is considered, well, pretty crucial.
Why is that?
Its main job is managing inflation, keeping employment steady. If people think political pressure is influencing the Fed's decisions on interest rates, for example, it can really spook the markets, undermine trust. Stability is key.
But the commentary also noted Trump seemed to back off that criticism more recently.
Yeah, they did, and offered this view that Powell is maybe the only widely respected economic figure left in that government sphere from their perspective.
What do you take from that?
Well, it suggests maybe a grudging acknowledgement of the Fed's importance, or perhaps just a view that, compared to other areas criticized by the commentary, Powell represents kind of stability or credibility, even from their critical standpoint.
Interesting. Okay, then there's Scott Bessant, an economic advisor mentioned. The commentary raises a couple of points. First, this idea he had to strategize alone to get Trump's ear on tariffs.
Yeah, the commentary frames it as him needing to sort of maneuver behind the scenes, wait until other advisors weren't around.
What does that imply, according to the commentary?
They interpret it as suggesting a lack of a unified economic team or strategy. If policy is being made in these sort of isolated encounters rather than through a coordinated advisory process, it points to potential fragmentation.
And the other point was about Bessant being silent on some of Trump's social media posts, specifically LGBTQ plus issues.
The commentary highlighted that silence.
What's the potential implication they're drawing attention to there? We need to be careful not to add our own view, but what's their point?
They seem to be raising questions about, well, maybe priorities or alignment within the advisory circle. By pointing out the silence on social issues while he's advising on economics, they might be suggesting a kind of compartmentalization, or perhaps questioning the factors influencing an advisor's public stance, or lack thereof. It prompts you to think about the different pressures at play.
Got it. And they also question whether just being wealthy automatically makes someone a good economic advisor, referencing some video of Bessant.
Right. Questioning the automatic link between personal wealth and, say, expertise in national economic policy or even financial literacy for the broader population.
Okay, so pulling back to the bigger picture, the commentary critiques Trump's overall economic approach. They argue it's driven by individual ego more than sound principles, and they criticize dismantling expertise.
Yeah, that's a core theme. This concern that decisions might be impulsive or based on a government as a business idea, which they call a myth that, in their view, failed.
What's wrong with thinking of government like a business, in their view?
The commentary argues that running a country is fundamentally different. It involves public good, long-term stability, diplomacy, things that don't always fit neatly onto a corporate balance sheet. They suggest a business mindset might overlook these complexities, and that devaluing expert input within government agencies is risky.
And they even brought up things like the Diet Coke button, McDonald's. How did they connect those personal habits to economics?
Well, rhetorically, they use those details to paint a picture, to reinforce their argument about leadership style, suggesting maybe impulsiveness or a lack of focus on the seriousness or detail they believe is needed for complex economic governance. It's using small details to support a broader critique.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The key takeaways from this particular commentary seem to be: 1, Tesla is facing some serious financial dips, which the commentary links, at least partly, to Musk's public actions and image.
Right. That's a major thread.
2, a really sharp critique of Trump's economic strategy, especially on China trade and tariffs, questioning its coherence and effectiveness.
And raising concerns about stability and predictability in U.S. economic policy based on his actions and rhetoric.
And 3, raising questions about the advisory structure around Trump, the influence of advisors like Bessant, and the overall approach to economic expertise in government.
Exactly. It paints a picture, through their specific lens, of intertwined challenges in corporate leadership and national economic direction.
So this deep dive leaves you, the listener, with something to chew on. Thinking about this connection, how the public actions of leaders, whether corporate like Musk or political like Trump, seem to ripple through markets, affect global perceptions, maybe even influence consumer behavior.
It really makes you consider how these high-level individual choices and political alignments play out on a bigger stage, how interconnected it all might be.
And maybe even what role we play in all this as consumers, as citizens. How do our choices fit into these larger dynamics? Definitely food for thought.
Indeed.
Thanks for exploring this commentary with us today.